Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, my name is Rick Faulk. I'm the CEO of Locus Robotics, and I do have a safety tip of the day, and this is from a real customer in the United Kingdom of Locus. And the tip is very simple, and it sounds self-serving, but it's true, and that's to automate and with autonomous robots. And what we were told by this customer in the United Kingdom that the way they used to do the operation was with manual carts, and these were big metal carts that workers pushed around the building. And in many cases, the workers couldn't see over the carts, and the carts were actually running into folks. And believe it or not, they called the carts widowmakers. And with automating with Locus, they no longer have that problem. So the high-level safety tip is automate.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more. How do you create warehouse superheroes? The answer is simple. With visual voice scan solutions from ProCensus. With record demand and labor shortages, warehouses need more effective workers and lightning-fast onboarding. Visual voice scan solutions from ProCensus enable warehouse workers to achieve superhero performance with up to 20% improved productivity and up to 99% accuracy. Hands-free barcode scanners from ProGlove paired with wearable mobile computers is just the beginning. Improved mobile interfaces with reduced keystrokes, easy-to-read screens, custom keyboards, voice-enabled interface, and more can be realized with ease on the leading WMS platforms. Sound too good to be true? Let us show you with our one-of-a-kind virtual demo. Visit ProCensus.com to get started today. Again, that's ProCensus.com to get started.
Starting March 28th, Modex 2022 lets you see what's coming and take advantage of it to power your supply chain with more possibilities for years to come. With 850 exhibitors and education sessions, Modex 2022 is where you'll find the more of everything. From illuminating education to next-generation technology and equipment in action to the latest equipment and system solutions for your supply chain needs. Visit modexshow.com and join us March 28th to 31st, 2022.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am going to be joined by three guests, all three from Locus Robotics. Rick Faulk, the CEO, he's going to join us again back on the show. And we're going to have Jason Walker, who is newer to Locus, which we're going to talk about. And he's the VP of Market Development. And we're also going to have Patty Katsaros, who is the Director of Market Development and Operations. And I'm told she does all the hard work at Locus as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about Locus and how Locus and Waypoint Robotics came together and what they're doing to really help accelerate robotics in the warehousing space and helping companies to automate and get to a better place in efficiency and optimization overall. So Patty, Jason, Rick, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
Thank you, Kevin. Doing great.
Yes, happy to have you back on, Rick. Happy to meet you, Patty and Jason. So give us a little bit of, we know about Locus, has been on the show before. You guys have very cool cobots, the Locus bots that zip around, and I've gotten a chance to demo them myself as well as I've shown on the podcast and the website. But you guys recently joined forces with Waypoint, where Jason was at. So talk to us a little bit about how kind of Locus got to the point of joining forces with Waypoint to be where you are now as one unit.
Let me start maybe by giving the Locus view, and then Jason
Sure.
and Patty can chime in from the Waypoint perspective. So we kept hearing two things from clients. The first thing we've heard is they wanted a single vendor solution. There are, as you know, Kevin, lots of robot companies out there, and to simplify things inside the facility, most of these vendors like to work with one, maybe two vendors at the most, because it simplifies everything from support to training, gives them more buying power and that sort of thing. So that's the first thing we heard, was they want a single vendor solution, or again, at most two. Second thing we heard from customers over and over and over was, we love your Locus robots, but we want them to carry more bulk and more weight, effectively doing more use cases in that building. So as we looked at our strategy to expand the business, we hired a major consulting firm as well. And it's funny because they told us the same thing, that if you really want to grow the business, you've got to carry more weight, more bulk to serve these clients around the world.
Right.
And the best way to do that was you could build something, which was an option, or you could buy something. And that took us down the buy it path with Waypoint. So that's how we were introduced. And Jason, Patty, you can give maybe the Waypoint view on that.
Yeah, this is Jason. From our point of view, we had been privately funded. We had been growing the company organically, and we had made pretty spectacular progress with a pretty incredible team and modest resources. And we got to a point where we realized that we were going to have to kind of go big or go home, as they say. And so whether that meant finding a great partner or raising VC money for the first time, we knew we had to fundamentally change things. And we were made aware that was looking, and they were made aware that we were open to a conversation. And things went pretty fast from there. We're located nearby. We're sort of in the same... It's a small community in robotics anyway, but we're in the same local area, kind of the same cohort of robotic startups, and had been, aware of each other and, kind of in the same class in high school the whole way through the journey for both of us. And the things that we were learning, we approached the market very differently, Locus and Waypoint. And the thing that was the same is we both were seeking to simplify our customers' life, make things easier, give them a faster, easier path to more productivity, and using robots in a way that was really meaningful and helpful and healthy for their workers. So Locus did that by doing everything for the customer. Right. Waypoint did that by building robots that were so easy to use that the customers could put them into service themselves. But the thing we learned is that the labor market is so ridiculously tight that even if somebody could do it themselves, even if your shipping and receiving clerk could set up a Waypoint robot, they still don't have enough time. The idea was good that if you have to go hire a roboticist or hire a company to set up your robot for you, then it's a non-starter. Yeah. But the thing that we didn't anticipate is just how profoundly tight it was to get, any spare resources. And so that was one of the things that just made a lot of sense about, doing things the way Locus is doing them. And robots as a service, it solves so many problems. It takes so much risk out of the equation. We had so many customers who just wanted to start small, try one thing. Yeah. A lot of times in robotics, when you try one thing, it's not an accurate test, and it'll fail for reasons that have nothing to do with the viability of the actual outcome that you want. And so being able to do robots as a service solves that and many, many other problems. And so there were a bunch of reasons why it was a great fit to go with Locus. And those are just a few of the top ones.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay. Great.
The other thing we saw, and maybe Patty can comment, is Waypoint had traction in the industrial market, which is a market that over time we think will be interesting to Locus. We want to stay focused on the logistics part of that as we do the integration and launch the business. Okay. But the industrial market is huge, and all this work we had done by our outside consulting firms pointed to that, and we believe that over time our TAM will be absolutely double because we can go after these additional use cases, thing one, and secondly, going after this industrial manufacturing market. Again, Patty can comment on that in a minute. The other thing that was important to Locus, and it's important to, I think, anyone in the robotics space today, is access to talent. It's the hardest thing we all have, whether you're a small robotics company or a big one. The hardest thing is getting talent. And what we saw in Waypoint was a really great team, not a huge team, but a great team. Understood the client problem, that had a lot of the same values we had about keeping it simple for clients, as Jason talked about, and being able to bring that DNA into the company and that talent into the company was really, really valuable. Patty, you want to comment on the manufacturing market?
Yeah, I mean, manufacturing and really in general, the thing that really struck me and continues to stand out to me in the alignment of the two companies is really the focus on customers and the focus on reality and the focus on ease of use. And that's so critical in the manufacturing market and in industry where companies want to get up and running and they have difficult environments, and these solutions can work in all kinds of environments. That's one. And then two, just that focus on customers and reality. I think proving actually that the robots work, and the Locus system, and I've had the pleasure of going out and seeing it in person, it just works and it's amazing. And we heard that a lot at Waypoint, and how amazing the Vector and the larger robot Mavic is. And it's the same thing with the Locus system. It's extraordinary how well it works and how it helps the workers make their jobs easier.
Very interesting, and I mean, it sounds like it's it's a good match made in robot heaven, I guess we could say. And so, I mean, you guys obviously had similar ideals in the sense that I think Jason mentioned in there that you guys are both looking to improve the employee experience overall for the companies and helping to bring those employees to a more efficient way to operate, a more comfortable way to operate, and a better environment overall. So it's good that you found that synergy, and then you also kind of, I guess, were compatible in the sense that you were filling somewhat of a void for each other that you both were looking to expand upon in that way. So, when we talk about robots and the making employees' lives better and the way that they work better, oftentimes there's a little bit of skittishness, I guess, around robots and, how will they impact jobs? And you mentioned the tight labor market in there as well, even tight labor market in the robots world too. It sounds like it's hard finding talent, you said, Rick. And so, when it comes to bringing robots into warehousing types of spaces and abducing them and integrating them into the processes, why should existing employees not be so worried about them coming in? Why would it actually benefit them versus the idea that, their job is just going to disappear?
Let me take a stab at that first, and then sure. Jason and Patty have a lot of experience in this as well. Mm-hmm. Let me answer that by telling you a true story. Okay. And the true story was an email that I got 3 or 4 days ago. And the email was from a senior executive at a 3PL. And we had just launched at this site a week earlier. They had a manual operation before, and mm-hmm. we brought in Locus, deployed it. And he was having a meeting with his team. And one of the ladies walked up to him. He was asking for feedback. One of the ladies walked up. And I'll get this quote a little wrong, but it's really close to being right.
Okay.
I want to thank you for bringing in Locus because it's now allowed me to be the mother that I always wanted to be. Mm. And the operation manager, who's a big burly guy, actually started to cry. Oh. And he sent me this email, and of course we shared it with the company. And she went on to say that it's made my day so much easier in the warehouse, so much easier that I now can go home and I have more energy, I have more time because we're finishing early, and be with my kids. And we get a lot of stories like that from clients. We have on our website what we call the love video, the Locus love video. Okay. And it's a collection of probably 8 or 10 minutes of examples like that. From workers that work with Locus every single day. We make their lives easier. I mean, this is a job that is not an exciting job working in a warehouse. You're walking 12 to 15 miles a day. Yeah. You're in a manual operation, pushing a cart that weighs 150 to 500 pounds, walking on concrete floor in unconditioned space, and typically you're making minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And getting no feedback about how you're doing from supervisors. And that's the reason why turnover in these buildings is unbelievably high. Turnover is measured in many buildings, double digits a month. A month. So they're turning over their workforce in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, turning it over the entire workforce. In some buildings, it's actually more than that. So we make that job a lot easier. And that's sort of point one. Point two, we don't believe that Locus has replaced many workers, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. Now, we actually double the efficiency of a human. We'll double it. So you could argue that to do that same task, it would take half the humans. Okay. The reality is what's happened is two things. These volumes are exploding so high and so fast that it still takes those extra workers along with automation to ship the volume. Point one. Point two, the other thing we're finding is that because labor is such a scarce commodity, that they'll take those workers that effectively are now relieved from doing the pick function, and they'll do the packing function. Labor is the scarce commodity in these buildings. And like I say, I don't ever recall a situation where a customer laid anyone off because of what I just said. Labor is just so hard to get. So that's a dynamic we're seeing. Having said that, there's always a little apprehension about robots coming in. And to your point, Kevin, what's going to happen to my job? So we help our clients work through those things. We have onboarding programs. We have fun contests where they actually name the robots. We give all the associates swag and have programs. So we like to alleviate that concern. And generally they find once we're in there that we actually do that. And again, they're really excited to work with Locus. And a lot of our companies, a lot of our 3PLs and retail accounts, industrial accounts, use the fact that you're now working with robots as a lever to recruit new talent. And they're seeing results. Now, Jason, Patty, what else do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I think so. It's almost always true that if you do have somebody who's willing to say out loud that they're worried about this, and a lot of times they won't say it out loud, but I've seen it when they do, and you can, and a lot of times point to a giant sign, like one place I was recently at that said $100 reward for a referral, the people who are employing them are struggling, and it's an existential struggle, right? It isn't a profit struggle. They're struggling to meet their commitments to their customers because they can't find enough people. And so reminding folks that it's a necessity, and the labor gap is, for a bunch of reasons, accelerating. It isn't just getting bigger as like e-commerce grows. It's getting bigger in an exponential way for a variety of reasons. So it's a problem that is getting worse and worse. So that's one part of it. Another thing that is, I think, very important is that using automation, using collaborative robots like the AMRs that we provide, they allow smaller competitors, local competitors, to compete with the giants of the world, the Amazons of the world. And I can't think of anything that's better for society, for a local economy, than having small players able to remain competitive, remain viable. And you just can't do that without automation. So having small companies, having local companies is key. In the manufacturing space, the reshoring that has been happening, the supply chain issues kicked it off, but it's really been possible because of automation. And so that, allows us to maintain the standard of living. And this is locally true all over the world, right? If you can do more things locally, then, it's better for the economy. It's better for the people. It makes it possible if you have automation that can be deployed in that way. And our robots are collaborative. The Waypoint robots, the Locus robots, they're all Locus robots now. They're collaborative robots. They're intended to work with people, for people. And that's not the same thing as, the robots of 70 years ago, where a giant machine would completely replace a whole bunch of people on an automotive assembly line. These are collaborative robots, and they empower people to be part of the automated future of the company. And I make a gigantic distinction between a giant automated machine that displaces people and machines that are designed very deliberately, very purposefully to work with people and to take the worst parts of their job off of their plates and let those tasks be handled by the robot. Let the robot do the 7 miles of walking. And then the mother can go home and be the mother she wants to be and have more energy, for her family and friends. That's a big deal.
I was in Spain a few weeks ago, and at the end of the day, I was walking out of the building. There's a big warehouse for one of our big clients over there. And I walked out, and there were 7 buses sitting there. And I asked the guy who escorted us out, what are those 7 buses for? And he said, labor is so hard to find these days that we bus workers in from about 60 miles away, outside Madrid, to help us. And they also pay those workers from the moment they get on the bus until the moment they get home. So their costs has gone up dramatically. But that's how hard it is to get the labor these days. And the reason why robotics is just so critically important. And Jason makes a really good point about making a lot of these folks much more competitive. This happened to be a smaller account. And, it's a great example about keeping everything local. Patty, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one thing is that one way that all of this works to help smaller companies, a wider variety of people compete, is in training. The systems are so easy to use that they enable companies to quickly train. And it's very important in higher turnover type environments, but it allows people to get trained up quickly and then escalated to higher level jobs. I heard it directly where they said, oh, great, we can get them in quickly on the Locus bots, get them trained in that area because it's so easy. They get up to speed so quickly, and then they can move over to all these other jobs that we have, which is excellent. And then another point too is that because they're multi-language, walk up to a Locus bot and it instantly knows if you're Spanish speaking, for example. It enables a much more diverse set of workers or group of workers that you can quickly get hired and up to speed and help and get them going.
The other thing we do when you walk up to the bot, like Patty mentioned, you're wearing this Bluetooth tag,
right?
And she said it displays the task in the language of your choice. The other thing it does, it gives you feedback on how you're doing for the day, where we will tell you what your pick rate is for the day, how you're doing against goal, how many units you've picked. And these are workers who typically never get feedback on anything. And now we're telling them how they're performing against goal, how they're doing against their peers. So we're providing that positive feedback and metrics, and also providing that to management as well. So we're making that job a lot easier, a lot safer as well.
I can't resist saying that a couple of weeks ago, I was in the middle of the U.S. and was hearing a story about buses coming in from local communities, local being like, up to 80, 90 miles away, where they're bringing folks in to work. So it is a problem that's everywhere.
I was in London, just another international story. I was in London about 6 months ago. We were launching a new client. And we're sitting around a big table. There were probably 30 folks in the room. And the head guy for this account said, "Rick, do you know why you're here?" And I said, "Well, I think we're here to talk about our launch plan, how we're going to roll out Locus in your facility." And he said, "No, that's not why you're here." He said, "Let me take you to the window." Walks me over to the window, points out at some vacant land over there is a building in the process of going up. He said, "Rick, that's an Amazon building going up." And that Amazon building going up, I'm not going to be able to get workers because in some cases they pay more, most cases they pay more, very aggressive recruiting. So I said, "That's why you're here. You're here to help me compete against Amazon."
Very interesting. Yeah. And I can attest to the labor market. I'm a warehouse manager myself, and getting labor is just incredibly difficult. And I love Patty's point about the training as well, because it gives you something easy to start somebody on, because at this point, and I'm saying this from experience, is when you have somebody that's like comes through the door and they want to work, you don't want to delay their start or anything. You want them to start the next day, and you may not necessarily be ready to train them fully that day. But if you can stick them on something easy like the Locus bot, I mean, it certainly gives you a chance to get them started quickly, and then obviously give them a great experience as well working with the Locus bot too, with the simplicity. So really a lot of great things that you guys are doing, and obviously coming together, helping enable even more. You guys talked about the walking, and how I know the Locus bot is targeted on reducing that walk time, but also obviously adding the additional payload now with the Waypoint Robotics as well helps from a safety perspective, less lifting, less carrying of heavy items too. So we talked a lot about the tight labor market, and Ricky just mentioned about building something out there in London across the street from that guy. But another thing that is becoming a hot commodity is also space, right? So finding additional warehousing space and space that is available has been a huge thing as people are trying to increase their distribution capacity, increase capacity overall to hold their inventory, as maybe people are now increasing the amount of inventory they're buying just to keep up with demand, and also not run into shortages and backlog situations like we have in the past. So coming up for Locus, I mean, how are you helping to kind of address some of these concerns?
A couple things. First of all, there's around 100,000 buildings out there around the globe right now that have to be automated. You could argue 3 or 4% of those are automated, but that's about it. So that's 20 billion square feet of warehouse space, with an average building of being about 200,000 square feet. In addition to that, there'll be another 6 billion square feet of warehouse space built over the next several years. That's further going to add to this market size. So it's just a massive market now that's got to be automated. And all these, those 100,000 buildings that I talked about, for the most part, are brownfield buildings. By definition, they were built, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years ago, never ever designed to be automated. And Locus, and there are several other folks as well, but not many, can actually automate those buildings. And again, it's just a massive market that, we're all going after. And, everyone realizes they have the problem. It's the labor problem. And how you automate brownfield buildings is something that's really, really hard to do these days.
So, I mean, if people are looking to say, we talked a lot about the smaller companies here, and how you guys are helping them to enable to compete with some of the bigger players, and how they're really able to kind of utilize your robots as a service model, obviously to have a lower entry point cost as well, which is a great thing. But if people are smaller and they're in some of those buildings, like you mentioned, that maybe are 10, 15, 20 years old, and they haven't done any type of automation, and now they're realizing they got to do something, right, to keep up. So I mean, what are the challenges that they might face, or challenges that maybe they think they might face that they shouldn't be worried about when automating with some of the Locus robots?
The challenge that they have is momentum. They've been doing it that way for the last X number of years, and there's some change management that's got to happen in that facility. And change management is really, really hard sometimes. And what we find, unless you have executive sponsorship, change management can be difficult. That is typically the biggest problem that we find. It's rarely the deployment. We've figured out how to deploy our technology, and Waypoint has as well, in brownfield buildings. That's fairly easy to do, or greenfield buildings. We can do both. But going in and changing something that at some level has worked over the last decade or longer, changing that is difficult. And this is an industry that is risk resistant, which is one of the biggest challenges. These are buildings that literally can't shut down for 3 minutes, let alone 3 seconds to be able to deploy new solutions. So the other big challenge is really changing the wings on the airplane while it's flying, because you cannot shut these buildings down. You've got to automate it while it's operating. And that sounds almost impossible, but that's what we do. We do that integration. We'll go into a building. We have a whole process on how we do it, very, very structured. And we'll go in, map out a plan, map out a timeline. We do some work behind the scenes. For the most part, we rarely shut that building down when we do the whole automation process. In some cases, if they want to set up new areas or that sort of thing, new pack areas or aisles, we'll do that, and the building may be down for a few hours or something. But for the most part, that's it. And I would say the third challenge is integration with typically the warehouse management system or other systems. So every warehouse, sort of by definition, has a warehouse management system.
Right.
And we have to integrate with that. That typically is the long pole in the tent, measured in a few weeks. So it's not all that hard. We've built connectors into all the major WMSs, Corber, Manhattan, Blue Yonder, and others, to make it easy. But we've got to do that integration, and we've got to get it right. And that, like I say, typically can be a challenge for some IT organizations, because IT is one of those organizations within these accounts who has 145 things on their list, and this may be a new 146th thing.
Right.
And you get operations and management that wants to move it to the top of the list to get automated, but IT may not look at it that way.
Yeah.
So those to me are typically the three biggest challenges. It's never, or rarely about economics, rarely about capital, because we make it very easy. As Jason said, we've deployed a RAS model, robots as a service.
Right.
So the CapEx up front for a building is basically a setup fee. And typically it's not very much. It's a rounding error on the cost structure in that building. So we make that very, very easy to do. So that's typically not an obstacle. But I would say those are the three big ones. I don't know, Jason, what do you see?
Well, I think the technological part of it. So first of all, I completely agree with and want to reinforce everything you said. The human part of change management is always tough. But technologically, autonomous mobile robots are a relatively new thing. This is a nascent, infant of an industry, and the technology is still, compared to things like forklifts and conveyors, it's really immature. And so things are changing fast. And I think people have oftentimes been led to set their expectations higher than they probably should in terms of what most AMRs are capable of. And I think both Locus and Waypoint have done an exceptionally good job of solving real world problems and being very honest about what our robots can do, and not pretending that they can do things they can't. And so if you have somebody who's brand new to robotics as a customer, they're likely going to have expectations that are way too high. If you have somebody that's extremely seasoned, they're going to be suspicious, as they should be. And so having technology that you can trust, and what I mean by that is, Locus as a company, we trust our robots to do what they're supposed to do. And that technological capability to do the job they're supposed to do, to meet expectations, and to let our customers be able to trust our robots to deliver on the promises, that is really, really important when it comes to building systems into brownfield locations and dealing with environmental conditions that change all the time. And it's something that I think a lot of people underestimate. There's a lot of companies that are coming into the space. There's a big market. I think in part due to Locus's spectacular success, there's a lot of appetite to fund new startups. And I think they're going to have a lot of learning to do. And the head start that we have as a team and the technology that we have built and tested and proven out is a huge advantage. And it's a huge advantage for our customers. I was at a building the other day and somebody literally dumped a bag of garbage that they had been collecting onto the floor and had our Vector driving through that pile of garbage for about 10 minutes to make sure that it didn't lose localization, that zip ties and plastic bags didn't get tangled up in it, because that's the actual environment that goes on there. And part of the human change management is, well, I've been throwing zip ties and plastic bags on the floor for the last 10 years. Now I got to change that I'm doing there in addition to all this other stuff. And so having robots that can function in the environment that's already there is a huge part of the value that we deliver to our customers. And typically we don't get into those details. We just say it's going to work, and and they can trust us because we don't make promises we can't keep. But if I had gone into that facility and said, I got a great robot for you, all you got to do is never throw zip ties or plastic bags or wrappers or tape on the floor again. And that's all that happens in this facility, it'd be a non-starter.
Let me tell you, Kevin, how these obstacles have changed over the last several years. We're about to go to a big trade show next week called X in Atlanta.
Oh, I've heard of it.
And I remember the first Modex I did about 4 years ago. Folks would come up to our booth and they'd look around sort of with a skeptical eye, and they would ask the question, what do you do? And they could see the robots moving around, and we would of course explain what we do, and they would say, why would I put my job at risk to deploy these robots in my building? Because there's a high probability they're not going to work. Well, all that's changed over the last 3 years. We're about to go to Modex next week, and the reality is their booth's going to be packed. I'm predicting we will not get the question, what do you guys do? They'll know what we do because they've been to our website. They've seen other robotics businesses at that show. And what's changed back 3 or 4 years ago was my job. Why would I put my job at risk to actually deploy these robots? To my job is at risk if I don't deploy robotics. And that really is what's changed over the last 4 or 5 years. So that was an obstacle. Job security and job risk was an issue 3, 4, 5 years ago. And now it's just the opposite. I am at risk if I don't do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even, to your point, even me just starting this podcast in 2019 and going to ProMat, to seeing, the last specs in 2020 before everything shut down, there's a drastic difference in just seeing the perception of the attendees and just the overall knowledge that people were coming with already. I think, in 2019, for me, it seemed like very oh, okay, cool, shiny object kind of thing. Whereas 2020, what I was getting from a lot of people is oh wow, we know what we're looking for. Can you deliver it for us? Basically, they're ready to go. So this year, I can imagine even in a greater sense, and we'll definitely be at Modex too. So we'll see you guys there as well. And I can attest your booth is always great, I will say, and I'm sure it will be packed definitely.
We have happy hour every day at 4:00. By the way, be sure to stop by.
Definitely be by for that. So before we kind of close out here, I wanted to ask you guys a question. I'm curious, as you guys have joined forces, Rick or Jason, either one of you can go first, but what's one thing that you guys have learned from each other by coming together?
Jason, you want to go first?
No, but I'll try. I've learned a lot. One of the things that was really appetizing about the acquisition for our team is that we were a small, scrappy startup, and the leadership team at Locus, they've built things at scale, and they have built this company the way they've built it because of their expertise and their experience, not just in the fulfillment and logistics space, but in business in general, in tech in general. And so I've had so many opportunities to learn from this team that it's difficult for me to put a finger on any particular thing. I think this is definitely not something I'm learned because it was something that we were exceptionally passionate about at Waypoint, but the way in which Locus puts the customer first is just very different. We put the customer first, and that we wanted to build a product that was so easy to use and so anticipated the needs of the customer so well that you could drop it in their lap and they could just figure it out. And we had unsolicited feedback from people who said, "Wow, it's true. I can just turn it on and do it." And Locus is doing things at such a larger scale and taking on the WMS integration and changing the way the building operates, but they're doing it with equal grace and ease. And it's just a completely different way to get the same outcome for your customers, which is wonderful to witness.
So Kevin, I'll answer the question by saying,
sure,
in a good way, we've learned nothing.
Okay.
So let me explain that.
Sure.
Most acquisitions fail. And, if you believe the data, in the high 70% of acquisitions that are done don't meet expectations, fail altogether, management teams fall apart, all that sort of thing. They generally don't work. And they don't work because there's a whole bunch of surprises along the way. Either the diligence wasn't done the right way, personalities and chemistries, are broken, don't work, all that sort of stuff. So I'm pleased to say I've learned nothing about surprises and doing this acquisition, which is a great thing. Had we gone in and found, 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 things that were surprises, we would have learned something in a bad way. Right. So the very fact that we learned nothing is a really positive thing, and in part has made the acquisition work.
Okay, very good. And so you mentioned you'll be at Modex, and I'll be there too. Obviously, you have the happy hour going on at 4:00, and you'll be able to, I'm sure, see all the robots moving around as well. But if people want to find out more information about Locus in general, or maybe they can't make it to Modex next week, how can they do that?
Right. The best way is our website, locusrobotics.com, obviously. We have very aggressive programs about getting clients started and, sales team who works with prospects and sales engineering team that will take information about that client, about the customer, about the operation, bake it into what we call a concept of operation and give it back to that prospect and tell them what they can expect, how many robots they need, what the rates will be, what the ROI will be. And the best way to engage is to go through that process. You've got to invest a little bit of time, but we promise it's time well spent. And again, what comes out of that is a very detailed concept of operation that says how Locus will perform in that building. And that's a document that we take as gospel when we actually do the deployment, and we hold ourselves accountable for what we tell the client. That's the best way to do it.
Okay, great.
I would add that you can find happy hour and some robots at booth B8811 at Modex. But another cool thing we're doing at Modex is we have an entire additional booth for our HR department. And we're recruiting, I believe, to the point where we got a booth at Modex just for that.
Wow.
We've got an extraordinary culture at Locus. It's one of the, as Rick said, there haven't been any bad surprises. One of the pleasant surprises is that the culture is just spectacular. And so growing as fast as we are, we would love to meet with any professionals who are at the show and looking for work, and we've got a whole booth for it.
Right, that's a really good point, Jason. We will go from around 300 employees last year. We were about 100 the year before. We'll be 500 by the end of the year.
Wow.
So we're doing a lot of hiring. I think we are probably the only company at Modex that has a booth dedicated to recruiting. And we're hiring across every single function. There's not a function at Locus that we're not hiring for. And we're also hiring all over the world, primarily in North America and Europe, but we're also expanding into APAC as well, and are selectively doing some hiring over there. So we're doing hiring in every single department and generally every corner of the globe as well.
All right, great. And that's a great tip there as well for people going to Modex who are potentially looking. And I will say that you guys are definitely on hiring blitz, because I see a ton of my LinkedIn connections switching over to Locus. So I definitely see you guys are on the move there. So it's been great talking to you, Rick, Jason, and Patty today, and looking forward to seeing you next week at Modex as well. And we'll definitely put more information about Locus X and Locus in general at thenewwarehouse.com as well. So thank you to the three of you for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.